Good morning and welcome to Cork Chamber's first Sustainable Cork programme of 2025 on this glorious Friday morning of the bank holiday weekend. There's really no greener way to start the St. Patrick's celebrations other than discussing sustainability strategies. My name is Cathal McSweeney, I'm Director of Public Affairs at Cork Chamber, and at Cork Chamber we are proud of our sustainability work, and this work has been recognised by the Government of Ireland, who designated Cork Chamber as an SDG champion for 2024-2025. At Cork Chamber, we are committed to embedding the UN SDGs across our organisation and throughout all our work. We have also formally pledged to uphold 5 SDGs, including SDG 13 climate action, which this morning's event directly advances. Some housekeeping before we kick off. Please ensure that your mics are switched off, and please be aware that we were recording this session for our own records. If you do have any questions, please use the chat box to join the conversation and they will be picked up in the Q&As. A big thank you to our sponsors, Cork Chamber Skillnet and ESB Generation Trading, for their continued support of the Sustainable Cork programme. I am pleased to extend a very warm welcome to our 4 speakers this morning, Sinead Traynor of ESB, Jim McGrath of AbbVie, Donald Quinn of Enzo, and David Madden of Cork Nature Network. With that, I'll hand over to Alicia Matthews-Cadenas, Cork Chamber's Revalue and Sustainability Lead and your MC for today's SCP. So over to you, Alicia.
Thank you, Cathal, and good morning, everyone. So today we are kicking off our first Sustainable Cork program of the year with the highly relevant topic of sustainability strategies and how to drive long-term success through sustainable action. As businesses navigate towards a more sustainable future, integrating practical and impactful sustainability strategies is essential, not just for regulatory compliance, but for long-term business resilience and success. We have an excellent lineup of 4 diverse speakers. This morning, they're going to discuss a range of topics from their sustainability roadmaps to communicate about sustainability or integrate biodiversity. We will also discuss the recent changes and updates on CSRD and what that means for SMEs and large businesses. So with that, I would like to introduce our first speaker from ESB, Sinead Traynor, Sustainability Analysis Manager. With nearly 2 decades of experience in leadership and management roles within the energy sector, both in Ireland and in the UK, Sinead has a proven track record in strategic, plant and project management, as well as engineering and asset development. She is part of the team driving significant changes in ESB sustainability performance and reporting, and her expertise includes developing ESB's first hydrogen projects and having a deep understanding on sustainability reporting frameworks. So Sinead, over to you.
Thank you very much, Alicia. I'll try and get the tech working for a start. Can everybody see that? Are we okay?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. So yeah, thank you very much, Alicia, and many thanks to Cork Chamber for inviting ESB to speak here today. So really delighted to be speaking here on sustainability strategies, especially as we hear so much in the media about sustainability. The term can be used in so many different ways, so it's a really good opportunity for me to tell you what that term means to ESB. So ESB have been generating electricity here in Cork since the 1950s on the River Lee. We also have a site in Aghada with natural gas-fired generation and battery storage technologies, which provide support to the grid when the wind is not blowing. In addition, as part of our strategy, ESB is planning for the development of all the significant components for an energy hub right here in Cork, those being offshore wind, hydrogen production, storage and peaking plant. These components and this energy hub will ultimately help deliver secure, decarbonised electricity and will help to enable the decarbonisation of industry and wider society. As Alicia mentioned, I'm the Sustainability Analysis Manager in ESB, and that's a role created as part of the new organisational structure that was put in place just last year under a new Centre of Sustainability. Just as an aside, I know Alicia introduced me, but I am a mechanical engineer by profession, so really the kind of the technology and I suppose the fundamental view of going to net zero by 2040 is kind of core to the work that I've been doing for the last 15 or 20 years. So in terms of our actual strategy, ESB Net Zero by 2040, just to kind of start maybe way back, ESB was established in 1927. Since then, we've been characterised by a commitment to drive society forward and deliver a brighter future for the customers and communities we serve. Our current strategy, ESB's Net Zero 2040 strategy, driven to make a difference, Net Zero by 2040, is our North Star. So, of course, we didn't start at net zero. ESB has been on the decarbonisation journey for quite a while. So our first significant shift there was in making that shift from more carbon intensive fuels like peat and oil to less carbon intensive fuels like natural gas, and investing in newer, more efficient technologies as they all became available. The second shift then is categorised by our beginning to invest in renewable technologies, and we're currently on that journey. So inherently, we've been on that journey for quite a while in terms of decarbonisation and climate action. But what really set our stall out was in 2017, our Brighter Future strategy set a clear direction for ESB to take action and exercise leadership in tackling climate change. As we all know, climate change is one of the defining challenges of our generation, a significant threat to the continuation of our collective existence, and is becoming more evident to all with the prevalence of extreme weather patterns, water shortages, biodiversity and ecosystem collapse. The electricity sector has a transformative role to play in climate change by reducing and ultimately eliminating greenhouse gas emissions from electricity. To deliver on this imperative, ESB's 2040 strategy, driven to make a difference, Net Zero by 2040, builds on the previous strategy and has been developed with a central focus to accelerate the pace of change, provide clear deadlines and accountability for ultimately achieving net zero emissions by 2040. So our strategy is focused on 3 of the SDGs where we believe we can make a lasting and tangible difference. So these are SDG 7, ensuring access to affordable, reliable, sustainable and modern energy for all. SDG 9, building resilient infrastructure, promoting inclusive and sustainable industrialization and fostering innovation. And SDG 13, the core of today's topic, is taking urgent action to combat climate change and its impact. Under our net zero strategy, we have 3 key strategic objectives, and those are developing and connecting renewables to deliver a decarbonised energy system by 2040, providing resilient infrastructure for a reliable low carbon electricity system, and empowering, enabling and supporting our customers and communities to achieve net zero. Underneath those objectives, we have foundational capabilities, and we believe these span the priorities that we consider essential to delivering our purpose and strategy. And those are ensuring that we have the people capability to deliver our strategic objectives, aligned with our strong values-based and inclusive culture, leveraging data and technology to transform ESB to a data-driven digital utility, maintaining our financial performance and strength required to deliver on our purpose, and also stepping forward on social and environmental responsibility in line with our values. So of course, at ESB, we understand that sustainability extends beyond tackling carbon emissions and climate change. It's our relationship with our lands that we own and manage, the resources we use and the communities we engage with, and much, much more. So in 2024, ESB published our Sustainability Leadership Plan. That plan builds on the foundations of the strategy and gives us a roadmap for how we deliver on that strategy in a holistic way across the 3 pillars of planet, place and people. This plan sets out actions and targets across each of these 11 focus areas, and we're integrating these into business planning and decision making in line with our net zero strategy and purpose. I'll call out some examples here just across each pillar so you get a flavour for our plans. For example, in resource use, we are including life cycle cost assessments as part of tender specification for all major capital projects. In biodiversity, we are developing all new onshore sites for biodiversity net gain. And for our customers, we're expanding our electric vehicle charging network to more than 2,000 public chargers within 5 years and having a target of 3,000 chargers by 2030. But there are targets and actions in all 11 areas, and this plan has been published so that you can all see the actions for yourselves. But most importantly, when it comes to making it happen, we are committed to reporting on our progress, pursuing collaborative engagement, and adapting our approach as the needs of planet, place, and people evolve. Strong sustainability governance and a culture of performance monitoring and reporting are fundamental to delivering on this plan. As I mentioned at the top of the presentation, ESB has established a new sustainability organisation to support the business in the delivery of the Sustainability Leadership Plan. We have teams that are focused on sustainability performance, reporting and governance, that's my team, on strategy, and those people provide expertise in the topic areas under each of the 3 pillars, and a third team which are focused on culture and change to enable our people to make the changes required to deliver on that strategy. For a long number of years, ESB has reported on its sustainability performance through a number of frameworks such as GRI, CDP and others. But we are now in the era of CSRD, and then of course Omnibus jumped in and kind of took us all a little bit, threw us all a little bit off our track here for a couple of weeks. But fundamentally there in CSRD, the European Sustainability Reporting Standards set out the requirements on what needs to be reported with the aim of increasing transparency in sustainability reporting. The team I am part of are focused on sustainability reporting, performance and governance, and we've been taking all the good work that we've been doing over the years and using CSRD as a lens to enhance that reporting and monitoring as needed. This provides us with a comprehensive framework which we can utilise to ensure that we're delivering on our net zero strategy. We know that the EC have proposed some changes to Omnibus, but for ESB, our net zero goals are our North Star. Nothing has changed there, so a comprehensive reporting framework is essential to that delivery in any case. In terms of driving long-term success, sustainability is not just a fundamental part of ESB's business, it is our whole strategy to decarbonise and to be at net zero emissions by 2040. So it's not only sound business practice for us, but there are other factors which contribute to that sustainability being key to our success. You can see a sprinkling of them there on the slide from being a commercial imperative to having that regulatory landscape with requirements such as CSRD, having that green bonds and climate finance being a critical source of finance, and ultimately then, preparing our business to manage climate risk, both in the physical and the transition space. And importantly, enhancing and enabling our customers and communities to be at net zero, and that kind of reputational piece around all of that. So fundamentally, there are loads of reasons why sustainability makes good business practice, and those are just a flavour of those. So, sorry, in terms of our key takeaways, just to summarise, I suppose ESB has been on our sustainability journey for quite a while. Our last 2 strategies have seen a doubling down on climate action. Now our net zero by 2040 is our North Star. In terms of driving forward and how we get there, we have publicly stated our ambition and are setting out our areas of focus and actions. We're embedding sustainability into our planning and target setting, and we're committed to sharing that progress, challenges and learning with the wider public. Many thanks for your time and attention, and I'll hand you back to Alicia to continue on.
Thank you, Sinead. That was great, and it was great to hear that regardless of changes in European policy in ESB, you're following your own net zero targets. We'll discuss more later anyway. Next, I would like to introduce our second speaker, Jean McGrath, Head of Finance at AbbVie Corp. AbbVie is a global pharmaceutical company dedicated to developing innovative medicines and advanced therapies in key areas, while also advancing their ESG commitments, including science-based targets to reduce carbon emissions. AbbVie has been present in Ireland since 1974 and operates across 6 locations, including 5 manufacturing plants, employing 2,900 people. The Cork site is targeting to become net zero by 2030. So I suppose Jean is going to tell us more about that. Jean McGrath is the head of finance for the Cork site with full responsibility for the finance function. Hi, Jim, over to you.
Hello. Okay, thank you very much, Alicia, and thank you, Sinead, for your first presentation as well. So let me just share here. Okay, can you let me know if you can see that there, everybody?
Yeah. Yeah, all good.
Okay. All right. So so today I'm the head of finance, as Alicia said there, for the Cork site here. I'm here 10 years. And what I want to do today is to talk you through the journey we've taken to reduce our carbon footprint over the past number of years, and also then to talk about what we're going to do over the next few years to bring us to reduce our carbon footprint as much as possible. So I'm just going to take you through the agenda I'm going to cover here today. I'm just going to give you a little bit about AbbVie. I'm going to talk about the global targets, which are similar to what Sinead is saying. That's what's driving our own roadmap journey for AbbVie here in Cork. I'm going to then take you to some of the projects we've actually implemented to date, which has reduced significantly our carbon footprint. And then I'm going to go through some of the future projects that we plan to take on between now and 2030. So just about AbbVie, a few facts. So we've 50,000 people worldwide working for AbbVie. We treat 60 million patients annually in 175 countries. Our turnover in the past year has been $56 billion. And we were formed in 2013. Previously, we were part of Abbott, and we were spun out in 2013 as a new company focusing very much on biopharmaceuticals. And our key areas of focus are immunology, oncology, neuroscience, eye care, and medical aesthetics, and a huge emphasis on R&D. We've spent over 50 billion over the past number of years in the R&D space. And I suppose from an Irish perspective as well, in 2020, we acquired Allergan, which really grew our business here in Ireland significantly as well. So I think Alicia spoke about this. We're actually in 6 sites here in Ireland. We are located in 2 in Sligo, 1 in Mayo, 2 in Dublin, and the Cork site. And really, the biggest site for us across Ireland is actually our site in Westport. It's about 12 to 1,300 people working in that site alone. And then we produce products across 5 of those 6 sites. And as we talked about immunology, the key products there are Humira and Rinvoq. For blood cancers, oncology, we have a product called Venetoclax. We have a product called Creon, which we make here in Cork, which is a key product for people with cystic fibrosis. And then we have products in the neuroscience area, which are primarily made in our North Dublin site, which is a key site for us also. And this is just a little picture of where Cork has come. So we started in 2001. And so the picture here it says very, very small site, whereas the picture here now is a significant site, which we built up over the past few years. And this is just a little picture of our front of our building here. We have 240 people on site. We make capsules and tablets as our key business here on site. I suppose what we're most proud of is that we're a safe place to work. We've 15 years without a lost time accident on site, and we have capacity to make over 1 billion tablets a year. And some of our key products are located here. So Mavorite is a key product for the treatment of hepatitis C, Venetoclax for blood cancers, Creon for people with cystic fibrosis, and then Tricor, Trilipix, and Cola for people with what we call dyslipidemia. It's like people who have lipids in the blood. It treats that. So then I'm just going to go through some of our global targets next. So these are the global targets set corporately for AbbVie across our environmental area. And I suppose the key one I want to talk about, I suppose what we're going to focus on in the later part of the presentation, is the 42% reduction in greenhouse gases. So this is the global target. By 2030, we will have a 42% reduction on that. We also have targets then on the use of electricity, supplier emissions, water, hazardous materials, recycling, etc. So significant number of various environmental targets. So on a progress to date, so we don't actually have the final 2024 final data yet, but to the end of 2023, we had a 26% reduction on that target of 42%. And based on what I'm aware, I'd say we're gone to 30%. So we would have 75% of that target achieved by the end of 2024. So significant delivery on those targets. And the one thing about, similar to what Sinead spoke earlier, real focus on the data analytics here. So we want to ensure that this is not greenwashing, this is actual delivery of carbon reduction. We can see it, we can feel it, we have projects that tie this back, and the numbers behind this are really, really key for the company and for the reputation of the company as well. So what I wanted to do here is spend a little bit of time on our sustainability roadmap in Cork. So while the target globally is to be 42% reduction, we want to be 90% reduction by 2030 is our own individual target. So we measured a baseline in 2021 on science-based targets of, we had 2,967 metric tons of carbon in our energy system. And we built a kind of a roadmap across 3 specific areas to drive that down. And I suppose the first one is become more efficient. So without changing what we had, are there things we can do to be more efficient? And also, to be more efficient, we needed to be measuring what was driving the biggest elements of that carbon annual usage. And we did a lot of work in 2020 and in 2021 to kind of measure what was the drivers of our energy, our gas, our electricity, etc. And then the next phase that we see, and this is the phase from 2025 to 2030, is electrification. So first drive it down, then move it to electric where possible, and then for the remaining elements to move to renewables. So very similar to what Sinead was saying there. How are we going to move away from carbon-based energy systems? First reduce it, then move it to electric, and then move it to renewables where we can. So that's really our North Star journey, and this is our map, and this is what we map against it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just take you through some of the projects that has got us to where we are today. And I suppose the first one, again, the measurement really helped us. We could see that the boiler systems, we had very large boilers here on site, and they were using technology that was going back 15, 20 years. So in 2022, we delivered a new project, which was 6 by 160 kilowatt high efficiency boilers. So what that does in essence, I'm not a mechanical engineer like Sinead, so what it is really we're saying we split our boilers into 6. So we're not boiling this huge, large system of water to generate steam in our systems. We're doing 6 smaller ones, and that actually gave us 311 metric tons of carbon saving a year by that one project. And it was our first dipping of the toe in taking a significant project on. It was over $1 million of spend. And I suppose in the AbbVie world, and I presume in a lot of other sites that are looking at it, AbbVie want to reduce their target by 42%, but they want projects that stack up to deliver that system. So we needed to show at the end of this that we delivered what we said we were going to deliver to get the next tranche of money to deliver the next project. And because this was so successful in 22, we actually went with 8 actually high efficiency, low pressure hot water boilers in 2023. And you can see some of these, a picture here of the boilers. So they're stacked together. They don't operate as one, they operate individually. And what we also did here was we went from steam-fed heat exchangers to low-pressure hot water-fed heat exchangers, and we connected the low-pressure hot water into a network as well. The combination of the project that we had done in 22 gave us over 300 metric tons. This one gave us 700 because we combined not just this project, but combining with the first project, and where there was an interconnection between them, gave us 700 metric tons of carbon reduction. The next project we did was around our air handling units, and it was a redesign of the way we managed our air handling units. And for people in the pharmaceutical industry, air handling is really, really important because you have to change the air so many times to avoid any contamination. And also, depending on the ISO classification of the rooms that you're working in, you can have significant changes in our air handling units. So what we did here is we installed actuators to regulate the airflow through the dampers in a Creon, which is one particular area of it. We also worked with our technical colleagues to justify a reduction in the air change rates in the system. We repositioned the various air handling units to minimize the energy usage on the AHUs. And then we put in heat recovery coils also into 2 of the AHUs. Now, again, not a huge value project, but it gave us 93 metric tons of carbon on top of the other projects we did. Really nice niche project and gave us some nice savings. And then we also put in a heat pump. And what this allowed us to do was to link our low pressure hot water and our chilled water network to provide simultaneous heating and cooling. So if you can see, so that starting with the boilers, and then we did the second boiler project, and then with the heat pump, we actually were able to kind of link in a strategic way, step by step, our journey on carbon reduction. And so by Q1 2025, we've 45% carbon reduction against our baseline. So within a 4-year period, we've actually overachieved on what the AbbVie target has been versus the 2021 baseline. And these are the projects we've kind of done to date. I suppose the next steps are some of the key projects. So we want to get to as close to net zero as possible. But this is going to be one of our biggest projects. And really what this is doing is taking our gas-powered steam boilers and moving them to electric. So this is going to actually be as big a project as what we've delivered to date, and it will give us another 41% reduction on the baseline. This is actually going to increase our overall energy price because the gas is a much cheaper way of making it. But we've actually saved significant through the efficiencies to date that the company is keen for us to go forward with this. And it's probably the single biggest capital project that we have in our book. So I think this is going to cost just under $2 million between expense and capital in 2026. I suppose this is where the ESB and the networks are going to be really, really important, because as more and more companies move away from gas, the network is going to be really, really key. Because at the moment, once we have a gas network, we're not relying on the electricity network for the power here. We're actually using gas. So as we move away from gas and going to green energy through the ESB or the electric networks, we're going to have a significant saving on that. And I suppose the resilience of the network is going to be a key one here as well, because we're putting a lot more usage into the network than we currently have. Okay. The next one, again, is a small project, but it's, again, moving away to more high efficiency chiller. And this will take away, give us some resilience, and also will future-proof the systems. But again, it's taking a more inefficient system by putting in a more efficient system over time. And then I suppose one of our other projects in 28, 29 is going to be the whole solar PV. We've been looking at this for a while. We've been doing a lot of capital investment in the site. So initially we were looking at this on the roof, but because the roof is constantly being used and constantly being upgraded, we're looking at more on carports to put this in. We don't actually have evaluated it fully, but we plan to do it in 28, 29 to further reduce our emissions. And then looking towards the outer years of our long-range plan, I suppose we're looking at some heat pumps. We've already got a heat pump in place to help on the low pressure hot water. And then where we want to move to is the final part is around biofuels and electrification of our steam. So again, I think we're doing some work across the network in AbbVie to look at what could be a source of biofuel, and I know other sites are doing similarly, but that would probably be the next step to move away to bring us close to 100% carbon neutral by 2030. So they were the key projects that we've put together. I suppose to summarize, I think that what I would see it is going back to our earlier note there is around the efficiency. And to be efficient, we need to be metric driven on what's driving our energy and our carbon usage. I think secondly is to be credible within the network. You have to deliver what you say you're going to deliver to get more money to deliver the next projects. I think the electrification is going to be really key as well, because eventually we need to move away from gas-powered boiler systems. And finally, I think the big thing is to have a plan, because if you plan it right, each investment will support the later investments. I think that would be key that I've seen, is that, you know, we started in the right place. And as we've gone through by networking some of those, we've got additional savings as we've gone forward. So thank you very much for giving me the time to share our journey. And I look forward to any questions at the end if anybody wants to ask me anything. All right. Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you, Jim. It was great to hear your past projects that have got you here and then what you're planning for the future. Before I introduce our next speaker, I would like to mention that to all of our viewers, you can use the chat box for questions, and we will have a Q&A at the end after our fourth speaker. So next we have Donald Quinn, founder of Enso. Enso is an online platform that empowers businesses to develop impactful sustainability strategies and communicate their efforts transparently to customers and stakeholders. Founded by Donald Quinn, Enso was born from his first-hand experience in the private sector, where he saw a significant gap between business practices and sustainability best practices. Over to you, Donald.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alicia. So you should be able to see my screen.
Yes. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Brilliant. Well, look, good morning, everybody, and really great presentations from Jim and Sinead. I think there's a lot of learnings to take from what bigger organizations are doing. And what we'll look at now through this presentation is from the SME perspective. So at Enso, our mission is to simplify sustainability for SMEs and make it one of their key competitive advantages. And this morning, short enough presentation, we're going to try and get through a lot. We're going to talk about what is sustainability, what are the regulations that are affecting businesses, why is it still important and relevant for businesses to engage with sustainability, how to communicate it, and then just how to get started. What are the easy wins for businesses? So we'll try and fit all of that in and look forward to any questions afterwards. So we work with a lot of SMEs, and a lot of the time businesses are asking us, what is the difference between ESG and sustainability? I thought this would be a nice place to start this morning. So ESG, I think of it, it stands for environmental, social, and governance. And think of it as the framework where businesses, or where you can benchmark and report on your sustainability activity. So sustainability itself is looking at that holistic view of your business. How are you impacting the environment? Are you having a social impact, working within your community? How are you treating your employees? That all of these make up your sustainability strategy. And then ESG is that framework where you can benchmark it in your industry or report, or even for investor due diligence. So why is sustainability now crucial for business success? Sinead mentioned the CSRD in the recent omnibus. So CSRD is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. And for us as a business, that was driving a lot of requests from SMEs. So even up to a month ago, we were doing this presentation. So the original timeline that was laid out, that was sort of underway up until about a month ago. Last year, businesses with 500 plus employees were reporting under sustainability within this CSRD framework. And this year, businesses with 250 plus employees or meet two out of these three requirements net turnover of 40 million or balance sheet assets of 20 million. They were getting ready to report, so they were starting to gather data, starting to engage consultants and get ready for this big piece of work. And then it was going to expand over the next couple of years. But what's come out, and now this is just proposed, but we don't see this being changed. But it's just a big caveat. It is a proposed change right now. It needs to go through the EU process of getting ratified. So where we're at right now, it's slightly different, and the scope has been significantly sort of, not widened, shortened. So within this would have affected 50,000 businesses throughout the EU, which was huge. And a lot of the businesses that we worked with were in the supply chains of these larger businesses. So as part of reporting, these large businesses would need to get data from their supply chain. The proposed new CSRD implementation is that companies with 1,000 plus employees and then one of the two of 50 million turnover or 25 million in assets will need to now be reporting. So the scope has now been shortened really like hugely. So we're looking at now this effect around 8,000 businesses as opposed to 50,000. For businesses between 250 plus and 999 employees, there's a proposed stop the clock or pause. We should get more clarity over this over the next few months. Even in 2028, we've left this blank. We don't know what is the new timeline. So it's interesting, like here in Sinead as well, it's, net zero is their North Star. So nothing is really changing for them. Sinead, you mentioned before where CSRD was a sort of an output of all of this anyway, but nothing really changes. And I think that's really important for a lot of these larger businesses. So from an SME perspective, you still could be working with a company within this 1,000 plus employees, and they need data from you. So it's still really important to keep this in mind. And then for the other companies, the EU have released what's called the VSMEs. So this stands for the Voluntary SME Guidelines. And this is great because it actually gives businesses a framework. Whether you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 employees, right up to this 999 now, you can use the VSME as a framework to start gathering the data you need, implementing your sustainability strategies, and just taking real action. So for us, this VSME guidelines has been a real godsend for SMEs. One of the good additions that's being proposed is that if a company is asking for data from their supply chain, it needs to be within this VSME framework. So this is just a very top level of what's been asked. It's split into environmental, social, and governance, just as a taste of what is. I think there's around 54 different impact or different data points that you need to gather, as opposed to 1,200 plus for the CSRD. So there's a huge difference here, which should make it easier, but at the same time, it's a bit of a rollback and a step back from the EU, who on a global level was really leading the charge on sustainable change. But hopefully we'll still push it forward. So with environmental, you're looking at waste, emissions, water, biodiversity, social, looking at health and safety, and remuneration of employees, human rights policies, and then into governance, looking at anti-corruption, revenue type. So like where are you getting your revenue from, and then gender diversity on a board level. So it's still really important if you're an SME to think about larger companies you're working with that will be asking for information from you. Some other really important key business areas to think about. One is green public procurement. So the EU have released their green public procurement strategy, which gives guidelines to member states on how to implement green public procurement. So you're going to see this in tenders. We're seeing it a lot now. If you're looking at e-tenders, you'll see this where there's going to be some ESG or sustainability criteria. And in Ireland, that can be up to 10% of the marks of an individual tender. So it could mean getting it or not getting it, winning a contract or losing a contract. And we're also seeing this, it's in the UK as well, if you're doing anything cross-border or in the UK, they've got their own version of this. And then we're seeing it coming into the corporate world as well, where in their own procurement policies, ESG and sustainability is now a really key part of their contract renewal discussions and new business opportunities. Finally, I want to bring you, if you're direct B2C, there's going to be huge advances in terms of what barcodes are going to look like on products. You're going to see the implementation of QR codes where consumers at the point of sale at a supermarket can pick up a product, scan it, then see the full sustainability story of where that product came from, who are in their supply chain, where that and all of the other details. So there's an opportunity here for businesses to get ahead of it, get all of this data together, do it once, and then use it for all of these great business opportunities. So in terms of communication, I'd usually spend a lot longer on this, but just to bring to your mind, Jim mentioned around greenwashing, the importance to not greenwash. The EU have brought in the Green Claims Directive and the greenwashing ban with a purpose to standardize communication around sustainability and environmental claims. You cannot make any vague or misleading claims. For instance, like years ago, carbon neutral was a big phrase that people were saying, but it was very vague and hard to actually quantify and hard to supply supporting documentation for. So really important to be aware of these. And it just gives you a point of difference if you're able to align with them. At ENSO, we've developed the Impact and Integrity Matrix. It's a really simple way of looking at how do you communicate what you're doing and how do you do it right. So again, I'd usually spend a lot more on this, but very, very simply, we want to align our sustainability actions with our communications so that we're up here in this top right-hand quadrant. Generally, the businesses we work with are somewhere around here where they're doing something on sustainability. They might be working with a local community group, supporting a charity, or just treating their workers well, or have some sort of environmental initiative ongoing. But they're not communicating it right, and that's for a number of reasons. It can be maybe fear of greenwashing or fear of being accused of greenwashing. Maybe you just don't know how to do it, or maybe your information isn't in the right format to share it. So for us, this is a huge wasted opportunity for direct marketing, for sales communications, and for even staff retention and hiring. So once we're not in this bottom right-hand corner, we want to make sure we're providing supporting documentation for everything that we're talking about around sustainability, and then aligning our communication with our actual actions. And this will help us get the most out of sustainability. How do you do it? We've developed our own platform to help businesses do this, but as a framework, just think of it like this. When you're talking about sustainability, you might have it on your website and it's a couple of paragraphs. We want to go into a bit more detail and really get a bit more granular. So be specific about what you're doing, then add some details around how you're actually doing it, and then include supporting documentation to prove that you're doing what you say you're doing. And this feeds into data requests and into public communications as well, or direct B2C communications. How can you get started? So for us, Sinead and Jim both mentioned frameworks. We've developed our own framework, which is relevant for SMEs. So business impact is policies and procedures. Environmental impact covers everything from energy use down to digital emissions. Trading impact, looking at your whole value chain. And then social impact can be everything from community engagement to working with charities. And for us, it's really about just doing a quick audit of this, seeing where you are. And as an SME, generally you're doing more than you think you're doing. The trap people fall into is thinking of sustainability just as environmental and just as energy. There's a lot more to it. And when you look at it through a framework like this, then you can actually really see that you're doing more than you think that you're doing. Other frameworks, the SDGs are great from the UN. We're a B Corp as well. That's probably more if you have a product in B2C. But there's lots of great frameworks out there, and happy to talk them through with you. So really quickly, how do you get started and gain momentum? For us, it all starts, you need someone leading it within your business. You need that top-down pressure, or not pressure, like buy-in from senior management, but you need to have a sustainability champion or sustainability team. So see who's passionate in your organization, see who wants to get involved, and then start having regular meetings around sustainability. Measuring is such an easy way to get started. A lot of businesses don't measure their energy bills. All of the information is there. You can track it on a platform, put it into an Excel sheet. It's really easy. That's a really good way to get started. And to see where you are, Jim mentioned setting a baseline. So you know then if you start making improvements, you can see that improving as you go on. Identify easy wins. Like I said, go through a list like this and actually, do you have a mission statement? Yes. What is it? Get it into your plan. Employee handbook. Has it been updated recently? Diversity and inclusion. What policy do you want to include here? So there's a lot of easy wins here that you can go through by using the framework. And then finally, just to really emphasize, don't worry about perfection. A lot of people are scared to even communicate anything because they think it all has to be done at once. Nobody is expecting you to have all of this done at once. You can really just like get started. People want to know that you've done that audit, see where you are, and then share your plan for going forward. And my final thought is just remember, get involved with sustainability. It can be simplified, it can be streamlined, and when you communicate it, you can use it for tendering, for contract negotiations, aligning with these VSME and CSRD regulations. If you're looking at investment, this is really important. And then finally, attracting and retaining the best people. And that's a really, really quick fire round of sustainability for SMEs.
Thank you, Donald. That was a great presentation. A lot of information there, and especially it was very interesting to see the framework that you have created and the platform that especially aimed at SMEs for them to start with sustainability. Thanks. And as you mentioned as well, the VSME also integrates biodiversity. So with that, I'd like to introduce our next and final speaker, David Madden from Cork Nature Network. So he is the Corporate Development Director there. Cork Nature Network is a non-for-profit dedicated to protecting and restoring Ireland's wildlife and ecosystems. Celebrating its 10th year, Cork Nature Network continues to drive impactful biodiversity action through community involvement and collaboration. David has a background in sustainability and corporate engagement, and he leads efforts to secure strategic partnerships and funding to advance conservation, education, and research initiatives. Over to you, David.
Thank you, Alicia. Appreciate that. And thanks to the other speakers. So today, just to focus a little bit from a sustainability strategy perspective, you've heard from other speakers with industry knowledge. I want to talk a little bit from Cork Nature Network perspective on the case for biodiversity and integrating that into a sustainability strategy within a business. So just quickly before we start, just who is Cork Nature Network, or CNN? So our mission is to protect and promote Ireland's wildlife through education, research and conservation. So we aim to help restore healthy, functioning ecosystems for both wildlife and human populations in Ireland. So we are a registered charity, a fully volunteer-run organisation. We were established in April 2015. So we're very proud and pleased. We're hitting our 10-year anniversary next month, which is a great mark for the organisation. And we're a not-for-profit as well. So then before we start, maybe it's just helpful to discuss what is biodiversity and what is the definition of biodiversity, and then we look at from a business perspective. So biodiversity is essentially the variety and variability of all life on Earth, and it's invaluable for our ecosystem and ecosystem services that natural capital provides to us and provides to business. So from a business perspective, what if I told you that biodiversity loss is not just an environmental crisis that we hear about, but it's also a business risk. And today I'll show you why acting on biodiversity is essential for long-term business resilience. So firstly, in terms of the services that nature provides for free, it's estimated that is factored in at about $125 trillion a year. From ecosystem services. The challenge that we're trying to address and that you may hear about in media is that biodiversity is declining at an unprecedented rate globally. Terrestrial ecosystems, marine environments and wetlands have all been significantly altered or lost directly because of human activity. In the Irish context, 85% of our EU protected habitats are now defined as in an unfavourable status. And this loss is not just an environmental concern, it's a business risk and has direct financial and operational consequences. Specifically, companies that are reliant on agriculture, food, pharma, or natural materials are particularly exposed to biodiversity loss. It's estimated that 75% of the global food crop production are impacted by pollinator decline, and 75% is linked to that directly. From a legislative perspective, I know there's been changes, but the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, the Global Biodiversity Framework, and within Ireland's own National Biodiversity Action Plan, they all are calling on businesses to take action on this crisis. Ray Anderson, who in his TED Talk on the business logic of sustainability, believes that business is the only institution that is large enough, pervasive enough, and powerful enough to be able to do something about this problem. So from a strategy perspective, if we look at the landscape in terms of what is to take into consideration. On the overarching piece, you have the Convention on Biological Diversity, the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. From a reporting element, again, I won't go too into this, but you've got the GRI, FRAG under CSRD, and the IFRS, all have biodiversity and nature called out as a reporting element that needs to be factored in for businesses. Under the Sustainable Development Goals, a lot of the other speakers have mentioned as well, there's 17, 2 of them specifically are around biodiversity and nature, 14 and 15, so life below water and life on land. So in terms of strategy, I think it's helpful to look at a sustainability maturity model or a sustainability maturity path. This is developed by EcoChain. So if we start at the bottom rung, you've got the zero, disregard, ignore, continue, business as usual. We are seeing businesses with the shift in reporting standards forcing them into the compliance section. So, you know, reducing compliance risk, reducing operational risk. But it is an opportunity to use that within your business to a springboard further up that curve. So you've got obligation expected to do. So for businesses that may have, you know, emissions directive or a license, there's certain things they have to stick to from an environmental perspective. 3 is into efficiency and smart to do. So that's focusing on resource efficiency, your energy, carbon, waste, water that a number of the other speakers have mentioned that often come with significant operational cost savings and again are a good springboard with finance and exec leadership on why sustainability is a good strategy. As we move further up, you move into 4, leadership and long-term viability. So looking at sustainable innovation, looking at the entire business model and enhancing the brand. And then finally into 5, which would be running a purpose-driven organization. Donal mentioned the B Corp. That's a lot of what they would talk about. So it's bringing value beyond your business economics, and value for society and the environment. So in terms of what can business do, what can your business do? So one, I would say, look, use your voice. You have a significant impact across many different areas that you would touch in your business practice. So firstly, on supply chain, you know, you've got suppliers, so working with them to understand their impact on biodiversity and encourage them to bring nature or biodiversity into what they do. Within your employee base, you know, running biodiversity action days, so organizing staff activities. You know, a lot of businesses would run volunteer days where they may give staff, you know, a couple of hours off for a day. For Earth Day is very popular to do tree planting, beach cleanups, or invasive species removal on different sites, either your own site or on the site of, you know, an NGO or a biodiversity organization. Internal training and engagement. So again, educating employees on biodiversity is important. So that can be workshops, e-learning, or again, the biodiversity focused volunteer days. Earth Day is coming up in April. That's kind of a popular one for a lot of multinationals in particular, but a lot of businesses to get, you know, speakers in to talk about what is biodiversity, why is it important, what's the situation in Ireland, and, you know, most importantly, what steps can I take or what can I do to have an impact. If you're in a position to financially contributing to conservation organizations that tend to rely solely on funding through government and corporations, so providing financial or in-kind support to local NGOs. And then we'll just look at a business nature plan, how you can develop one of those and put them into practice. So ultimately, it's assessing your footprint and your impact on nature and identifying where it impacts and what you can do about it. So business nature plan, what is it? Ultimately, it's a plan to increase biodiversity. And there's 5 key elements. So it must be local. You can one or multiple small areas that you have access to. Keep it simple steps, simple measures, and ultimately it's achievable. It's an opportunity to take responsibility for your local area. And it's a chance to put actions into place that ultimately protect nature. And we'll go through a couple of actions in a few slides that you can take. It makes your community a better place to live and for your employees, and protects wildlife for current and future generations. So the steps involved in putting a plan together. So firstly, identifying interested parties. Is there someone within your organization that has a passion for sustainability, a passion for nature or biodiversity? There usually is. It's getting them involved, and a project they can get stuck into and lead can bring a lot of purpose to the work that they do, and it will really help them drive it forward. Identify the area for action. So do you have access to, you know, a green space within your site or location? I know a lot of businesses may not, depending on where you're based, but even if you're in a business park, right, which obviously a lot of us would be, is there an opportunity to come together with the other businesses in the area, talk to the landlord, identify different actions you could take on site and bring a plan and propose it. Research the area. So what's the current situation? You know, what natural spaces are there already? What planting is there? If there's planting, is there nature on the site? Are birds nesting there? You know, what does it look like? Set the actions and goals that you wish to achieve, and then review the plan. You know, make it an iterative process. We should be really reviewing every 6 months to make sure everything's on track, and review annually, see what's worked, what's not worked, and make changes as needed. In terms of examples of local actions that you can take, so from a planting perspective, you know, wildflower meadows, putting them in place, bringing in pollinators, looking at pollinator plants and plants that provide food throughout the growing season. So ensuring the planting scheme has that available. Nettles for insects, putting in no-mow areas or mowing much less, and allowing, you know, from the natural seed bank, native Irish flowers to come up. Eliminate the use of pesticides as much as possible, you know, really are detrimental to biodiversity and the wider ecosystem and food chain. Look to plant native hedgerows and native trees as much as possible. If on researching the area, there's invasive species on the site, those will compete with native species. Is there an opportunity to remove those? Again, potentially looking at getting staff out for a couple of hours on a volunteer day and getting them involved. And then look, insects, nesting areas, you know, putting dead wood on the side, bug houses, creating banks and earth banks for them to hibernate, long grass, and birds, food, berries, habitat for nests and nest boxes. And ultimately, all of the actions, you would say, if you're giving food, homes and shelter for wildlife, we're on the right track, and we're creating the right environment to bring nature back and wildlife back into the site. So again, we're Cork Nature Network. What I would leave you with is, what biodiversity action can your business take this year? What can you integrate from the plan? In terms of supporting our work, look, you can join us, become a member. We have email list that gives updates on all the different events that we run. Follow us on our socials, and I'm available at corporatecnn@gmail.com. I'd love to talk to anyone who wants to discuss anything that we discussed today, or anything in general, and how we can work together. And look, a big thank you to the Chamber and Alicia for the opportunity to come and speak. We really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, David. It was great to hear your point of view from the, integrating biodiversity and all of the things that SMEs can do that might just be also involving their staff, especially now towards summer. You know, there are a lot of activities that can be done. So we're going to move to the Q&A now. Thank you to those who have been adding questions in the chat box. I have a question first for Sinead and Donald. I know there's been, in the news the last couple of weeks about CSRD and Omnibus. So, this has already been mentioned today, so I won't go into repeating all of that again. But first, for Sinead, I know you have an understanding and a lot of experience on sustainability reporting frameworks with you and in your team. So you're probably still processing the recent changes and news, but I wanted to hear your views on this and what in ESB, what are you working? Is this going to change anything, or are you continuing with your global target?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Alicia. Yeah, as you mentioned there, and as Donald mentioned, like certainly that proposed legislation from the European Commission, as Donald kind of went through it in a nice bit of detail. So thanks a million for that, Donald. I think that's really appreciated. So that proposal, I suppose, for us, like when we kind of initially sort of took that in, I suppose personally a little bit disappointed, from that perspective. I think just for me, as a sustainability professional, I was a little bit like, okay. And then, you start to kind of do the mature reflection piece, and you do listen to what the European Commission are saying about kind of competitiveness and so on. But I suppose taking a step back from an ESB perspective, as I said during the presentation there, like sustainability is a key imperative for ESB. And fundamentally for us, like CSRD provides a really, really good framework to report on our business activities. And I think, the other kind of key fundamental point for us is that, I suppose CSRD was providing that guide rope in terms of, we had done a lot of that baseline kind of measuring and monitoring that Jim was talking about, and we have been developing those metrics over a long number of years. I think CSRD provided us with that, and still provides us with that framework to kind of, I suppose, crystallize on those things and report on that. wider, broader kind of suite of activities aligned with the sustainability leadership plan. So I think for us, while we see probably simplification of legislation is always welcome. I think that particularly some of those things around the reduction in kind of that piece around the assurance. So simplification is always welcome. I think even for a large organization like ourselves, like it helps to be clear and transparent. But like for us, fundamentally, CSRD is still in scope for ESB, so that's not changed. We will continue with the good work that we have done to date, and then see how we align that for 2025 reporting, and then the go forward for 2027. Like we will take time to review what those CSRD changes mean for us, without doubt. Like, I mean, that's just what we would do prudently as a business. But fundamentally, I suppose for us, it's that sustainability performance piece that's the really important piece. Like Jim was saying, and unfortunately I didn't get a chance to go into that detail about the projects and so on, but like we have a lot of strategic performance indicators in our Net Zero Pathway report, in our annual reports, that they fundamentally will not change. But like the reporting for us is the kind of the back end, the output piece. But like fundamentally, that still stays, net zero strategy still stays, all of those things. So that guide rope piece, certainly very strong and clear for us, but like we will take our time to review what that means for us.
Great, thank you, Sinead. And Donal, I suppose from an SME perspective, now that the omnibus changes to maximum or like below 1,000 employees, so what should a business with less than 1,000 employees do now while the CSRD timeline is being updated?
Yeah, it's really difficult. We're talking to some businesses who are just continuing as normal, and likewise, I was really disappointed in this. And for me, it would have been a lot better. The issue wasn't that the size of the company, it was the level of reporting. That there's a big difference between a 250 plus employee business and 1,000 plus. But they were, they had to report in the same areas and the same amount of data points. So that was a big issue. Whereas I feel they could have kept the same scope, but just maybe reduced it and simplified it for those smaller companies. But again, let's see what comes out of it. For me, depending on what size you are, the VSME is just a great way to do it. So the VSME framework, no matter what you're doing there, that will give you the foundations to springboard and prepare for CSRD if you do need to do it. But given the high probability, like we don't want to say it, but we still don't know the exact timeline and when it will be ratified. But for me, if I was in that category, I'd look at the VSME guidelines, get into that framework, and keep moving on those. So you're not stopping your sustainability journey. You're just reducing the amount of data points you're going to look at, but then still prepare for data requests from these larger companies. And just one question, I just see Deirdre's mentioned there, how do you manage the dilemma between competitiveness and sustainability? And this feeds into it. For SMEs and for these businesses, to stay competitive, you need to have sustainability. So it's not like an either or. It's looking at getting sustainability in place so that you're ready for data requests and ready to align with larger companies and be part of a supply chain and win new business. So it's definitely not an either or. Sustainability, in my opinion, definitely makes you competitive, and you can do it, on a streamlined way and just get your strategy in place. But they're aligned. They're one of another.
Thank you. Jim, now in your presentation, you showed us a lot of your projects, and you were mentioning, you focused on efficiency. So why was it so important for you in ACPI to focus on efficiency when looking at reducing the greenhouse gas emissions?
Yeah, well, I think you can take on the wrong project, I think, is the main issue. If you don't actually know what's driving the main use or the main outputs of carbon, it's difficult to go after the right one. And I suppose two, if you're doing a multi-year spend, you kind of need to focus on one that step one links with step two, links with step three, and often I'd be going in looking for capital funding from corporate, and you're saying, well, over this 3-year project, we're going to do this, and the stepping stones are the following. And it's much more credible when you have data to show how that's actually going to all hang together. And maybe talking back to the question about competitiveness and sustainability, like, I think the first thing is if you don't use as much energy, you'll have less carbon. you know, like it's a win. So if you can kind of take it down, and I mean, and I know it's the simple stuff, but like if electric boilers are on all night and if lights are left on all night, you can suddenly see that can be taken away by very simple activities, which is talking to people and changing behaviors, or putting in meters, or putting in automation on switches. So there's a lot of stuff that can be done without, you know, I know there's this various targets and things that we have to deal, but there's an awful lot of stuff that I call is common sense as well, that to start you off. And I think, as Donald said there, the quick wins, you know, people feel good actually that, you know, we're able to influence, because I think a lot of people feel they're out of control. How are we ever going to get this thing fixed? There's a lot of stuff we can do. And it's good business as well, you know, it's good business for people. You wouldn't do it at home, as I say. You wouldn't leave the immersion on, as people would say in the 70s or 80s, you know, you wouldn't do it. So why do you do it at work, you know? So that's the kind of stuff I think we can all take from this simple steps. And then possibly, as I said, the efficiency thing is when you measure then against what you said you were going to do, did you deliver it? Most times you won't do exactly what you think, but that will input for the next project and you learn from it as well. So, you know, it's a simple, you know, check, do, adjust, do again, you know. So I think that's always very, very good. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. We have a question in the chat that I'm gonna also ask to David. So I know, David, apart from your presentation and your background, you're also doing a master's in sustainability in enterprise. And you were telling me that your research dissertation is on the barriers to biodiversity within the Irish business. And in the chat, Miriam asked, what might be some of the main setbacks for businesses when trying to implement sustainability strategies? But perhaps you can also answer from the biodiversity perspective in the business community.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So from a biodiversity perspective and the barriers, I think it's probably helpful to split them into two: real barriers and perception. Like within real, the data is incredibly complex, right? So when the other speakers are talking, a lot of it is about resources, right? Things you can measure, and often broken down just to carbon and carbon equivalents, right? Very, very easy for businesses. And some of the research would say there's over 200 different biodiversity indicators to measure, right? So it's incredibly difficult. I think it's important to acknowledge that. The other element is from a skills perspective and a lack of skills, right? A lot of entities aren't going to have the biodiversity or ecology related skills within a business to be able to address it. And that is a challenge. On the perception side, it depends on the business, but there's kind of a perception of, is this a business responsibility or is it the responsibility of NGOs and government? That's one element. And there's maybe another perception that it's not that as important as it may be to stakeholders. And that's something to overcome. That, look, it often is, right? There's climate risk and nature plays a huge part in that. There's ecosystem services that nature provides that's treated as an externality that's not paid for, that a huge amount of our industrial economy relies on. And if that goes, we're all in big trouble, right? But that's the way I would split it into real and perceived. I think Deirdre has another question, just I might springboard into it, in terms of the resources that are available for Irish business. So there's two that I would be familiar with. I'm sure there's more, but there's the Business for Biodiversity Ireland platform. Their goal is on creating a nature positive economy for Ireland. They have a lot of really good resources and different tracks they put businesses on to get them started on a nature positive journey, but essentially helping them assess within their value chain their dependencies on nature, do a baseline assessment, and then take actions. The other one that's really helpful just in terms of actions, some of it I touched on today, but the All Ireland Pollinator Plan from the National Biodiversity Data Centre. People may be familiar with that, even just on a personal level. It's got really good stuff you can do within your own garden and your own green spaces. But they have businesses that sign up as part of their plan as well and take evidence-based actions. Now, they focus purely on pollinators, and their goal there is that pollinators are the proxy to biodiversity action and are often a good indicator of the entire health of an ecosystem. But they have a specific section just for business on what business can do. And they're hearing feedback, so that's why I touched on it, right? I don't have any location, I don't have a green space, I'm in a business park. They have a whole section now that's around business parks. If you're in a business park, what can you do? What actions can you take to look after biodiversity and look after pollinators? So they're the two I would absolutely strongly recommend.
Thanks, David. There is just one last question I'm going to ask before I wrap up. To Sinead, it came at the very beginning when you were presenting. Valeria was asking how many SDGs should be chosen as the main ones for a company. And I know in your strategy you said you chose SDG 7, 9, and 13, and I wonder did you meant to choose just 3, or is it because they were most relevant to your strategy?
So yeah, so they were the most relevant for ESB's strategy. So I think very much, now I have to say at the outset of this, I didn't choose them. I'm not an SDG expert or anything close to it, but certainly for us, what we did was we looked at kind of our key focus areas, and obviously, you know, we had that kind of piece around, you know, climate impact was obviously a huge one for us, but then our customers' communities, you know, so those are really aligned to our strategy and our purpose, and also our values. So I think for a business, let's say if they're a VSME or sorry, an SME, or if they're even slightly bigger, I think looking at the core kind of purpose of your business and looking at what you want to do, your mission and your strategy, whether they're written down or not, and then trying to just look at the key areas where you can potentially have the most impact. I think, you know, drawn out and focusing on probably, and like, listen, would welcome Donal or David and indeed Jim's view on this as well, but probably focusing on the key ones that you can have an impact on, rather than picking more just because, you know, you've ticked a few boxes with SDGs, and certainly maybe there's a more formal way of kind of choosing them as well, but certainly that kind of the values, purpose, and strategy alignment for us was really key, and resulted in the 3 there. So
Thanks.
Yeah, and I would just say on that, I think it has to be specific, linked to your business, and if it makes sense for your business, I think, because again, there's so many of them, but there's, you know, as Sinead said there, if you're in the energy business, that's very clear why you'd pick one of those. If you're in, you know, if you're looking to increase your diversity, it could be a key one for you to do, depending on what you see a gap between what you have and what you need to get to. You know, I think, and again, I think the big thing is not do too many, you know, things you can actually then deliver on. I think are key. I see a question there as well, just on the savings.
Yeah,
so we have got savings on that.
Financial benefit?
I think that there's 2 things there on that. I think we wouldn't have gotten the investment based on the savings alone, you know. I think so when we were putting in our business case for corporately, we did get some. Normally you'd look for a 3-4 year payback on any investment. If you can, some of these investments were 5-6 years, but with the greenhouse gas reduction, they got approved by showing the data with them, right? I think the other thing, we did get some opportunity to get some grants and support on that as well through SCAI and EOS support. But I would say it's disappointing in some ways that the amount of time it takes with our government colleagues to get some of this grants there. And maybe going back to the CRSD, I'm actually delighted it's reduced, because it's just too cumbersome. I think we should be doing the right thing. As Donal said, we should still be reducing our carbon, but the amount of paperwork is just, it's not reducing carbon, it's actually increasing carbon, the amount of paper that's involved in all of this thing. So, you know, I think it's important that we do stay focused and driving the real important stuff, you know. Yeah, so we would have seen savings on it, but it wouldn't have been enough to justify the normal investment criteria, I'll say, on that. All right.
Thank you. Great. So I'd just like to wrap up today's webinar. Thank you to our speakers, David, Sinead, Donal, and Jim. Also, thank you to our sponsors, Cork Chamber Skillnet and ESB Generation and Trading. Of course, thank you to our viewers. And we would like to actually mention that our next Sustainable Cork program will focus on the topic of circular economy. It's going to be our in-person event. It will be the 4th of June. You will hear more about it on our social media and also on corkchamber.ie, where you can check also information on other upcoming events and webinars. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks. Have a lovely weekend.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.